Frustration as feeling confuses progress and handicaps what progress you can make, because people end up focusing in on dealing with their frustrated feelings rather than dealing with the actual frustrating stimulus. I want to talk about, or we will talk about, the skill, focusing a lot on skills here of living life on purpose and with purpose. So we define purposeful behavior as a behavior that gets you closer to the thing you want, the overarching objective. And we discriminate between that and frustration management, the stuff that handicaps you, the stuff that prevents you from getting closer, okay? So skill, defining skill here, skill means any behavior shaped with a combination of feedback and benefit. I use the term benefit loosely here, beneficial outcome, meeting a standard, etc. And I use the word shaped as a semi-technical term because everything that you learn to do came from other stuff you already knew how to do. This useful feedback that we get comes from social situations, like if you have a guitar teacher and they go, great job, nice. We have environmental feedback, like does the guitar feel right when you play it, okay? We have instrumental feedback, a metronome or some other apparatus that can measure the pitch. Verbal feedback, like if you get applause from a crowd, I would consider that verbal feedback because it takes language to understand what that means, okay? And then we also have beneficial outcomes. It meets the standard of wherever she plays guitar. We might call this reinforcement. Very cool. So if somebody repeats a behavior with useful feedback and favorable outcomes combined, we can expect that person to perform that behavior with greater range and reliability. Fun ways to break down a skill into component parts that have some utility, range and reliability. So the level of skill a person has with guitar, with standing up for yourself, with cooking, with whatever, depends on these two variables. Range represents how big or small of an adjustment you can make to that behavior. And that could mean gross motor skill adjustment, like maybe someone does a really good job at just playing this one chord on the guitar. If you want to get better at guitar, it also means playing more chords, okay? So in that regard, you can increase your skill by increasing the range. Same thing with singing, literal vocal range, notes that you can hit, etc. With reliability, now you have how close each repetition of a behavior looks compared to the others. We could just call it consistency here. That kind of confuses it. Let us try something else. I'll put cloned responses here. If she plays that one chord the same way 1,000 times in a row, well, then she has reliability within that range. And if she played them all 1,000 times and they all sounded the same, she has high range and high reliability, which makes her a damn good guitar player. Okay, hopefully that follows in the context of how we can model skills, because as we go on, we'll start learning, okay, we can improve these two things separately from each other and still improve our skill overall. So stated in a plainer way, a person that has mastered a skill can, one, get predictable results with that skill, and two, achieve that result in a wide variety of situations. A novice egg cooker may only know how to cook an egg one way, do it 20 times, and screw it up in a different way each time, okay? That person has a smaller range and lower reliability. Amateur egg cooker may know how to cook an egg one way and nail it each time. That person has a smaller range and a higher reliability. An amateur egg cooker may also know 10 ways to cook an egg, but it takes a few tries to get it right. A larger range and lower reliability. And now a skilled egg cooker knows 10 ways to cook eggs and nails it each way each time. Large range, large reliability, okay? Now a master of cooking can make exceptional meals with a wide variety of cooking methods and ingredients in stressful environments, often calling audibles and making changes on the fly, even when they feel like vegging on the couch and watching cartoons. Now we get into something interesting. So we improve our skills in some things faster than others, but even in the areas that we learn faster, we still know that learning happens because we get the feedback and the beneficial outcomes. So does it surprise anyone that a person who reads for 6 hours a day got dang good at reading, okay? Or that many great readers, however you define that, probably come from families and or have circles of friends that have reading as an integral part of their lives. All of those points have a few implications, and we will focus on one, that mastering a skill depends on your opportunity to develop it. And that brings us back to tolerance and strategy. And this also brings up a secondary point of specificity, because skills, because of how we learn them, have some degree of specificity. For instance, a skilled graphic designer can also speak 3 languages, okay? But it clashes to assume the graphic designer knows 3 languages because of their skills in graphic design. Now, we might laugh when we say this, and when it comes down to analyzing things that happen in real life, people make this sort of superstitious conclusions all the time, frequently rather. So we might find it reasonable and still impressive that a person who you last saw could speak 3 languages and now can speak 4. We still find it impressive, but like, okay, you already knew 3, now you can make 4. This also has interesting implication that skills in and of themselves as behaviors can have transfer. And transfer means that some or all the characteristics of one behavior incorporate into other contexts. So transfer just means characteristics of one behavior complement others in other contexts as well. Some behaviors work well every place you do them, and some behaviors only work well in that one place. We'll get into that, okay? So skills in and of themselves as behaviors can have transfer to other skills because they have similarities, right? Like strumming a guitar and scratching your face have very similar motor patterns. They do. So it stands to reason if a human knows how to scratch their face, then they can also play guitar. Just some interesting way to think about it, okay? And so a combination of skills with appreciable transfer between each other form a skill network. So the sitting, the finger articulation, the reading, the breathing, all that stuff, they formed a network, worked together to create what we would call guitar playing. To give another example, the barbell squat. To describe the barbell squat very fast, you put a metal bar on your back and then you do a deep knee bend and stand back up, okay? The barbell squat, for instance, will improve a basketball player's vertical leap. If you start barbell squatting, you can jump higher. Pretty cool. Although in a traditional barbell squat, both feet stay planted on the ground, it works the same muscles in a similar enough way that it transfers to the vertical leap. Pretty cool. So we realize the benefits of transfer when you plot skill development over time. So the jumper that squats will get better at jumping faster and improve for longer than the jumper that only jumps, because he included barbell squatting into this network of skills. So a person that loves math and improves their study skills improves at math faster and improves for longer than a math lover that only does random math problems. So this starts hinting on behaving on purpose now. Our discussions then teach one of the highest transfer skills of all, the skill of learning skills, okay? Living on purpose takes more than tolerance and strategy around frustrating stimuli. It means avoiding, confronting, and overcoming those stimuli in service of behaviors to achieve the greater beneficial objective. So the way that you tolerate a frustrating stimulus, the way you strategize around it, it behooves you to do that in such a way it gives you more opportunity to behave on purpose, to do the thing that gets you closer to what you want. And for that reason, we differentiate tolerance and strategy and purposeful action because one facilitates the other. So we do okay at regulating our own behavior in our own bubbles. Okay, living life on purpose means regulating your behavior to achieve the greater objective as reliably as you did in ideal conditions. So this makes behaving on purpose, really, it takes a combination of skills. It takes a combination of skills and skills worth mastering. So a person with 0 level cooking skills and a 6-year-old palate, right? Somebody who sucks at cooking and only eats chicken nuggets, they kind of handicap themselves.
Very true.
So if you only eat chicken nuggets and french fries and cheese sticks and apple juice and vegetables smothered in ranch dressing, and then swap overnight to trying to choke down steamed tilapia in the microwave, true story, then you put yourself in a world of hurt, okay? So by learning to like a wider variety of foods and also improving cooking skills enough to prepare some of those foods, people go from trying to lose weight on accident with miserable decades of failure to losing tons, triple digits amounts of poundage and keeping it off and still improving and running marathons, etc. Okay? And so if we consider living on purpose a skill or combination of skills, then we learn it and master it by improving our range and reliability with our purposeful action. So that means really having a grip on what to do and getting feedback when we do it in a wide variety of situations. Sometimes we get the feedback from other people. Sometimes we get it from ourselves. Well, that turned out And so if you have crazy rules that you set for yourself, that might mean you avoid cooking at home entirely instead of just changing the recipe a little bit next time. Punishment does weird things, okay? Realize beneficial outcomes by seeing progress with multiple measures. You can measure your body fat, you can look at photos, you can see how clothes fit, you look at the mirror, you can look at the scale. All these things provide feedback to help reinforce those behaviors that get you closer. And then it also means behaving on purpose in situations where it matters most. So what frustrates our progress here? What frustrates our progress? Well, what do you do when you want to change yourself? Well, you might make a reasonable guess that you do the thing that causes the change. If you do the thing that causes the change, then you get the change. How about that? That more or less defines purposeful action, okay? The thing that gets you what you want. In reality, like we just discussed, the answer looks closer to resolving what gets between you and purposeful action. You already know what to do, but we have a CVS receipt list to the moon of all the shit getting in the way from doing that thing. So that makes our work cut out for us in that area most often. You can also lump this into goal orientation versus a problem orientation, okay? Or the theory of constraint, looking at the things that keep our feet on the brakes instead of punching the gas. So those sorts of models and metaphors that we have in the background. So earlier we defined the thing between you and doing what it takes to have the life you want as a frustration. And so when it comes to frustration, facts facilitate function. And here we get into the rantiness of frustration as a feeling. So in lay language and conversational language, frustration describes a feeling. I'm so frustrated. Okay, rather than an event in the observable world. In other words, the thing that made you frustrated, that constitutes the frustration. The sort of panicky, toddler-esque feeling you have, that comes as a response to the frustration, okay? So in that regard, frustration as feeling confuses progress and handicaps what progress you can make, because people end up focusing in on dealing with their frustrated feelings rather than dealing with the actual frustrating stimulus. So if somebody feels frustrated, then what can they really do about this feeling? They can only do things to avoid it or numb it or dull it, distract themselves from it. And when they come down from that high, that frustrating stimulus still exists. So people have a tough time describing frustration, okay, often talking in circles and using vague synonyms or other nebulous language. And so the plan to deal with frustration amounts to some variation of just getting over it, okay? Or taking the Gandhi approach, so to speak, trying to white knuckle, whatever you want to call it. They want to avoid or get over this feeling of frustration. And where does that lead? Well, it leads to them leaning on their generalized repertoire of behaviors to avoid bad stuff. You might know this as doing things that help you feel better, to wind down, to relax, to fill a void, to go on vacation, whatever, which tends to amount to eating, drinking, smoking, binge watching, complaining, shopping, acting out, etc. We do these things to deal with our emotions, okay? Some learn healthier alternatives like meditation, yoga, exercise, walking, music, coloring, hot baths. These work as a healthier alternative to eating, drinking, smoking, binge watching, complaining, shopping, acting out, etc. They still serve the same purpose. Healthy or harmful, people deal with feelings by distracting themselves from it. And so a skilled emotion regulator invokes the powers of tolerance and strategy, see healthier alternatives, okay, and thus do it on purpose. So a lot of people, a step below Rye perhaps, have gotten a good hook on these skills, and so they substitute these healthier alternatives for the harmful ones on purpose, and they miss a crucial step of doing it with purpose. Do they buy themselves time to resolve the actual frustration, or do they just figure out ways to manage this irritation until it subsides? In a lot of instances, we have the latter. So you can do it on purpose to manage your frustration, but if the thing that frustrates you still exists after you manage it, then you just set another timer before you have to go through your ritual again. Before you know it, you meditate 18 hours a day. Good grief, or whatever equivalent, right? So you can have the world's greatest self-regulation, right? Managing any negative feeling that you observe, and the benefits, however substantial, still end there. They end there. These healthy alternatives buy you time to now have a rational response to the greater frustration here. So the bad feeling goes away. Oh no, I'll leave my guitar at home. Well, great, you can take it with you. Now the anxiety of leaving your guitar at home goes away. Congratulations. So the bad feeling goes away, and then what? You can only just wait for it to come back. And it does. And it does. So do you feel better for a bit? Sure. But what really changes? What really changes? So at best, a good best, by the way, okay, you did something benign to interfere with doing something dumb. You kept yourself from making it worse. Priority number one in maybe in life, figuring out what you could do to make it worse and then do something else. At the very least, okay? Priority one. Now, priority two turns into, now that we've bought ourselves some time with the healthy alternative, what can we do with it to now live life on purpose? So we discussed I did this on purpose to avoid doing the dumb thing, and now I do it with purpose to go toward the good thing. So at best, you do something benign, right, to interfere with doing something dumb. It's like probably, again, priority number one in living an adult life, okay? Avoiding the dumb thing. By framing frustration as a feeling rather than an observable event, that means that you create this repertoire of behaviors to avoid that feeling rather than the actual frustration itself. Okay, so by framing frustration as a feeling, a rather ambiguous sort of private event, even vague in observation to us, like if you say, what does frustration feel like? You probably end up pantomiming it rather than using big kid words, right? Exactly. So how does that help us? It does nothing besides give other people a chuckle out of context, right? You just like, okay, this does nothing to describe what actually happened inside of you. So it helps us to, facts facilitate function here. What things in the environment, what things in your interactions, what things with how you talk to yourself, okay? What sort of stimuli then contribute to this response of frustration, or this response of, I'll just call it throwing a fit, really, okay? So what frustrations end up inducing the fit throwing? Maybe a little bit better to frame it that way. So even the best description of frustration amounts to metaphor. Well, it feels like I have something in me about to explode. Is anything in you? Will anything in you explode? No. So does this do anything useful to describe frustration? No. At best, you have some dumbass metaphor that other people will agree with that does nothing to help you resolve it. It feels like I have an alien in my brain. But do you have an alien in your brain? No. And so all of these things confuse and distract with the intervention. Okay, let's go to the doctor to have him extract the alien in your brain. No, how does that help? And people live their lives this way. It just feels like I have a 10-ton brick on my back. Well, then move. I use feelings as an umbrella term for emotions and sensations. So you can feel hungry, you can feel pain, you can also feel love. People would consider love an emotion, but really an emotion in general consists of three things. It consists of a physiological profile, some event you observe, and some sort of intentionality toward or away. And those three things put together constitute what the lay population or the conversational term of emotion. It constitutes those three things: some urge, whatever you want to, however you want to say urge, some physiological profile, and some event, some experience that you had. That means that you emote 24 hours a day. So it just constitutes your current status. Feeling, okay, from a conversational term tends to mean a bunch of stuff. And so I keep it as that umbrella term of, if I feel frustrated, that could also mean I have the emotions of frustrated, but really from a technical standpoint, that emotion probably gets closer to something like indignation. It's unfair, okay? Because you demand things work out this way and they work out that way instead, therefore angry. So frustration really gets closer to something like anger from a technical standpoint. That confuses the conversation a little bit for some people, and also kind of feeds into the frustration anger hypothesis thing, which I also have a problem with. And anyway, that goes on a tangent. Basically, feelings encompass sensations and emotions, okay? And so I use it interchangeably with emotion quite often, but emotion really just means how you would describe the combination of your intentions, physiological status, and current experience. Those three things combine. If you tell me those three things, I could probably give you an emotion that would make sense. So really, emotions, we just use as words to describe these three factors at the same time. So if I love cheese, that means that I see cheese, I want to go towards the cheese, and I get excited about the cheese. Like my nervous system cranked up. Therefore, I love cheese. And you can also love your wife. Does that mean you love your wife the same way you love cheese? Technically, yes. And that gets weird. What does frustration mean? Again, people will just end up doing something like this as if it explains anything. And so we only have strange metaphors and wispy vagaries to work with when describing emotions or feelings, which makes them really, really bad at directing behavior. When something in the environment contributed to your current emotional status, if you modified the environment and your response to it, then you can swap your emotional outcome. So worrying about emotions themselves just leads you on this wild ass goose chase, because we have 1,000,001 ways to manage emotions. And unless you use that to buy yourself time to change your environment or your response in that environment, then you just set yourself up in a clockwork of avoiding bad feelings. So really, you just avoid the bad stuff in a more, in a healthier way versus a harmful way. You still end up wasting a ton of time. You spend your time meditating and walking 10 hours a day and coloring instead of doing the shit to make your life better. Hopefully that follows. So as my father would say, you want the right tool for the job. What end does emotion regulation serve? It helps you to tolerate and strategize, again, managing frustrations to give you opportunity to do the things that actually make your life better, rather than doing the things that keep your life from getting worse. So you want to do the things that keep your life from getting worse to buy you the opportunity to now do the stuff that makes your life better. These happen, in my opinion, in two distinct, we can discriminate it into these two different categories. And for that reason, we have purpose-filled action, the thing getting you closer, and frustration management, the stuff preventing you from making it worse. Thank you so much for hanging out. Dr. Kashey out.